Among the shadows. Some say there are places where time stands still, where shadows whisper secrets long forgotten. Such places are best left undisturbed, but curiosity is a dangerous thing. This is a story of those who dared to venture where they shouldn't have. A tale of fear, of the unknown, and of the price paid for disturbing the silence of the past. Beyond the town, deep within a forest where the mist never lifted, stood an ancient mansion. For years, no one had dared to set foot inside, for it was said to be cursed. Those who entered never returned, but Alex and his friends, fearless thrill seekers, scoffed at such tales. One night, they mustered their courage and decided to explore the forsaken estate. As the door creaked open, a heavy stillness engulfed them. Dust-covered furniture, faded portraits on the walls, and an eerie scent lingering in the air. Time itself seemed to have stopped within these walls. Alex raised his flashlight, illuminating the hallway just in time to catch a fleeting shadow. "Just a reflection," he murmured, though his heart pounded in his chest. They began to explore the rooms, finding nothing out of the ordinary. Until Lily stood before an old mirror and gazed into her reflection. Another pair of eyes peered back at her from within the glass. Her eyes widened in terror, yet no scream escaped her lips. Suddenly, the mirror shattered and the lights flickered wildly. Something was watching them now. Panic-stricken, Alex and his friends rushed to the grand hall. A whisper echoed through the mansion. "You found me. Now it's my turn." The voice came from everywhere at once, as if the house itself were speaking. They tried to flee, but the doors slammed shut on their own. Then, from the attic, heavy footsteps descended. Alex looked up to see a tall, shadowy figure standing atop the staircase. Its eyes were hollow voids, pulsating with a faint blue glow. The entity began its slow descent. "Run!" Alex yelled. They scrambled to escape, but the mansion's corridors seemed to shift, leading them astray. Each doorway opened to an unfamiliar space. Amid the chaos, Lily's scream tore through the silence. They turned back. She was gone. The entity was now close. As it reached out, the walls trembled, the floor quaked. Desperate, Alex pulled out his lighter and set the ancient, brittle curtains ablaze. Flames spread swiftly, and the entity let out a shriek of agony, retreating into the shadows. In an instant, the doors flew open, and those who remained stumbled outside, gasping for breath. By dawn, they emerged from the forest, watching as the mansion was consumed by fire. But as they turned for one final glance, they saw Lily standing at a burning window. Her eyes were black as the abyss, and she was smiling. Some nightmares fade with time, but others become a part of you. For from that night onward, whenever Alex gazed into a mirror, he could hear Lily whispering to him. Was she trapped in the realm of the lost, or had she become something else entirely? Perhaps some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed. The Ship That Breathes. In the endless abyss of deep space, a derelict vessel drifted, the USCSS Kronos. Perhaps centuries ago, it had embarked on a mission to explore a distant planet, but no word had ever returned. The Stellar Fleet Command erased the ship's disappearance from official records, until now. A signal had been received, faint, distorted, an emergency beacon barely clinging to existence, a sickening, crackling transmission. When the Stellar Fleet vessel, USSS Daedalus pinpointed the signal's source. Kronos was there, just beyond visible range, slowly tumbling in the void. A reconnaissance team was dispatched, but their fate would be no different from that of Kronos. Technician Elena Vasquez opened her eyes, a strange unease settling in her chest. Waking up from extended hypersleep to the ship's cold air was not unusual, but this time, something was different. Something gnawed at her senses, a crawling sensation that refused to dissipate. Within minutes of wandering the Daedalus, she realized it. The radio was silent. The rest of the crew should have awakened by now, but there was no sign of them. Only her. Cautiously, she stepped into the main crew deck. Approaching the control panel, a garbled recording crackled to life. "If you're hearing this, it's too late. You are trapped with us." The screen flickered and distorted. Then, before her eyes, crew logs began erasing themselves. Desperately, she scanned what little fragments remained. The team had set foot aboard Kronos mere hours ago. Through the viewport, she could still see its massive hull looming in the void. Her head swam as she staggered backward. Reality itself felt as if it were unraveling. Time twisted. Light seemed to bend. The very fabric of the ship felt wrong. And then, the truth crashed over her with dreadful certainty. She was alone. When she closed her eyes, whispers slithered into her mind. Kronos' decaying metal husk had, over the years, become something organic. It was no longer merely a ship. Panic surged through her as she rushed to disengage the docking clamps, to sever Daedalus from Kronos. But the systems were unresponsive. Every console was locked. The ship's software had been wiped. Her expertise lay in wrench and steel, not code and circuits. And so, she made her decision. There was no help coming. The emergency escape pods were useless in the endless dark. Staying meant certain death. The only way forward was Kronos. Clad in an EVA suit, she manually disengaged the airlocks and crossed into the forsaken behemoth. The whispers followed. At first, she dismissed them as auditory hallucinations. But then, the walls shifted. Faces emerged from the corroded steel, twisted, half-formed visages of the missing crew. They had not vanished. They had become part of Kronos. Terror gripped her as she ran, blindly navigating the labyrinthine corridors. A breath, not her own. She whirled around. Nothing. But the shadows moved. The void was watching. She lost all sense of time. The ship whispered to her, "You cannot escape." Her hands clenched the helmet of her suit to silence the voices within her own mind. Her throat was raw from screaming. Finally, she stumbled into a cavernous chamber, an echo of Kronos' bridge. But like the rest of the ship, it exuded something unnatural. She reached for the console, desperate, searching. But the buttons, the switches, they melted at her touch. Kronos was toying with her. One truth pressed against her ribs like a vice. She did not belong here, and yet she would never leave. The void pulled at her. The whispers swelled. The walls breathed. A figure stepped from the shadows. Ethan Reynolds. He should have been dead, but he wasn't. He smiled, and he said, "Don't close your eyes." Elena's breath hitched. The ship trembled as Ethan spoke, the walls exhaling like a living thing. Kronos was waking up. The metal panels retracted, inhaling deeply. At the far end of the corridor, the light flickered. The shadows moved. Ethan took a step forward. His boots made no sound against the floor, because he was no longer human. "Ethan," Elena whispered, her voice breaking. Ethan tilted his head. His eyes were empty, but within them, stars burned. We never left you behind. A shadowy hand pressed against her shoulder. It was cold, and yet it lived. Then, from the far end of the chamber, the voices rose. A cacophony of lost souls trapped in the ship's endless night. Elena staggered back, but the ship refused to let her go. Tendrils of shifting metal coiled around her ankles, binding her in place. Kronos would not release her. Ethan stepped closer, lifting a hand towards her face. Fingers brushed her helmet, or rather, they passed through it, as if it no longer existed. His fingertips touched her eyelids. Now, you will become one of us. Elena opened her mouth to scream, but no sound came. The shadows consumed her, and in the silent vastness of space, the signal faded. Daedalus and Kronos drifted into the abyss as one. But far across the void, another ship received a new distress beacon. Kronos had been found once more, now orbiting a distant, nameless world, and with it, a single message. Please, do not wake up.